Well, I guess the good thing is if you're Jerry Jones and you wake up this morning on this Friday before Labor Day, no matter what you do, you still cannot outdo Nico Harrison and the trade of Luka Doncic to the Lakers. That's how bad that trade was, but Jerry Jones stealing headlines in the NFL, and this is how we kick off the Labor Day weekend with the first full weekend of college football, and the NFL season now just a week away. What's going on, my friends? Chad doing here. It's the Rip City Drive. I am happy to be with you, and I got a lot of different things I want to talk about today, mostly football, both college and NFL, as we get ready for a brand new football season, which is awesome. I can smell it. You love football. I love football. Let the games begin. And we had a couple of good games last night, including Cincinnati and Nebraska. I think Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were on hand watching that game. So I will get to, by the way, this just in, I have now entered a new decade. As of yesterday, I am now 50 years old. I just got back from Anaheim, so I'll give you a full breakdown on my mini vacation, my birthday celebration, and the great feat that I had at Disneyland on Tuesday. So a lot of good things, but mostly about football. You can reach out to me. Telephone number 503-248-0620. You can hit me up on X at Chad and Rip City. You can text me direct on my phone. What do I care? 360-281-5473. I love to connect with everybody, so feel free to reach out. You can always check us out on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and pull up our homepage, Rip City Radio 620. And you can always listen live and podcast the show via our free iHeartRadio app. So it's a big day. We're kicking off the first full weekend of college football, and we're entering the Labor Day weekend. So I hope all of you, regardless of plans, have a wonderful weekend. And I appreciate your time as always. It's great to be back, and I am geeked up for football season. So I'll get to my trip and the birthday celebration in Anaheim a little bit later in the show. But I want to start with the news that we got yesterday with the Dallas Cowboys trading Micah Parsons, one of the best defensive players in the NFL, to the Green Bay Packers. How about Dallas going in conference and sending Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers in exchange for defensive tackle Kenny Clark and 2 first-round picks? Now, normally you're not going to see a player of that stature traded in conference. Normally I think you would see in the NBA someone in the East getting dealt to the West, or in the NFL someone in the West getting dealt, in the AFC getting dealt to the NFC. But the Cowboys were working with a more challenging, framework here, because not only were they looking for picks to get in return for Micah Parsons, but you also had to have a team that had the salary cap space that was required to get a new deal done for Micah Parsons, because you're not going to make a trade and give up those type of assets for somebody that's not going to re-sign, or for someone that you don't have the ability to re-sign. That wouldn't make sense for either side. So Micah Parsons is now with the Green Bay Packers. I'll get to the Cowboys in just a moment. I'll say this about Green Bay. Before this deal went down, I liked the Packers to win their division, the NFC North. After this trade, I can pretty much guarantee that's going to take place, because you've got Green Bay now with Jordan Love. And the big question is, can Jordan Love stay healthy? If he stays healthy, and that's a big if, they're going to be dominant, because they've got a lot of nice pieces. Very good roster. Jordan Love, when healthy, is very productive. And this is a team now that can bring it on both sides of the ball. So I like Green Bay to win the division, and I think this trade, getting an edge rusher like Micah Parsons, puts them in play in the NFC with Philadelphia, Washington, and whoever else you want to throw up there at the top of the conference. The Packers, they were players before, but now they're almost deadlocks to reach the postseason, assuming their quarterback stays healthy. So a great move for the Pack. If you're a Packer fan, you woke up popping rod this morning, because this is the type of aggressive maneuver that the franchise has avoided now for years. They did well with the Rodgers trade and managing that situation, but they haven't gone all in. And this is a case where I think head coach, the front office, they basically just put their nuts out on the table and said, we're going all in. We're going to get a big-time player like Micah Parsons. We're going to pay him big-time money, and we expect him now to be the cornerstone of the defense, to be a leader, to set the tone, and help put us in a position where we can compete to get to the Super Bowl. So a ballsy move by the Packers, and hard to imagine that's not going to pay off. The only real comparison that you can make in terms of a edge rusher at this stage in his career. Not even in his prime yet. Just before the prime would be Khalil Mack going to Chicago. And, the Raiders, there was kind of a dark cloud hanging over the organization for quite some time after they let Khalil Mack go. The difference is he went to Chicago, they had Mitch Trubisky, and they had quarterback issues. Basically, the Bears have had quarterback issues my entire life. So there is that. But Khalil Mack was a super stud. And in his heyday, probably better than Micah Parsons. But Parsons is one of the best defensive players in the league, and now he joins a defense where he is going to set a tone. And I've heard the numbers. I think only 2 players have had at least 12 sacks in their first 4 seasons in the NFL. You probably heard it last night, right? Who are they? Well, obviously one is Micah Parsons, and the second is, that's right, the Minister of Defense, Reggie White. And Reggie White, of course, went to Green Bay when free agency first came to the NFL in '93 and changed the entire culture, the landscape. He made Green Bay a place where players wanted to play, and they would go on to win a championship, defeating the Patriots in the Super Bowl. It's pretty awesome. Super Bowl 31. But what I don't like is the comparisons of, Michael Parsons, very similar to Reggie White. No, they're not. Reggie White's one of the best defensive players of all time. Reggie White's the Minister of Defense. He changed the way the game was played. I love Micah, but I don't care if each player's had at least 12 sacks in their first 4 seasons. Reggie White is, much like Belichick when it comes to Lawrence Taylor. Reggie White should be held in high esteem. So please slow your roll if you're comparing Micah to a guy like Reggie White, who changed the way the game is played. Nonetheless, he's a great player, and the Packers are going to get somebody that's going to be a game changer. So big winners here, the Packers. Also the Packer fans, and the big losers here, probably Dallas, probably Jerry Jones, but every other contender in the NFC. Because now the Packers have someone that can cause a lot of issues, a lot of problems in Micah Parsons. Now, if we turn our attention to Dallas, and with some of the people I reach out to down there that I know work in the market, who were at the press conference, a couple of things to keep an eye on. Number one, if you wanted to boil it down to one reason as to why Jerry Jones made this move, and the reason why the move is shocking is because Jerry Jones is not somebody to give talent away. He's not someone to trade established superstar talent. He doesn't do it. In fact, he's been criticized for overpaying his stars in the past, whether it be Dak or CD or, holding on to guys like Troy and Irvin and Smith for as long as he did, because he's a loyal guy and he believes in loyalty. And if guys take care of him and play well for him and treat the star right, he's going to extend his favor on them. That's what he does. So this is a move that's unlike something we've seen from Jones in the past when it comes to his star players. He'll pay them, he takes care of them, and so that's why this was a surprise. But, from what I heard last night, it very well could be the case where Micah Parsons' handling of the situation and the way that he operated over the last few weeks, showing up in sweats, talking about a back injury, being on the trainer's table, showing up eating with the sunflower seeds in his mouth, and basically hinting at the idea that he would utilize the back injury to collect game checks. Fake an injury. That's pretty much what's going on, because I can guarantee you Micah Parsons and whatever was wrong with the back, it's suddenly going to be healed, and he's going to feel a lot better when he shows up in Packerland. He's on the practice field with the Packers. He's getting ready for week 1. All of a sudden, a miraculous healing. Like Benny Hinn laid hands on him or something. Oh, I'm good. Praise the Lord. And all of a sudden, he's good to go. I mean, that's, I don't think Jerry was down with that. And I think Jerry, felt betrayed. And how Jerry is, he's big on loyalty. So if they had a deal that was in place, back in March, a little handshake, a little wink. I'm not sure if that's legal or not, but that's the way the situation was. And all of a sudden you get to a point where Micah's, basically looking like he might fake injuries to collect game checks because he's trying to force Dallas's hand. Well, that's not going to play well. The issue I have is this, and this is pretty simple, right? If you know, and it's hard to know when they knew they were going to trade him. It's hard to know if they've been planning this or thought it was a possibility, or they just woke up yesterday and was like, crap, we got to deal him. I don't know. But according to Jerry in the press conference last night, this is something they've been looking at. So if you know it's a possibility and you know that things are not going to go well in terms of negotiation, then why aren't you out in front of this back in March before the draft talking to teams so that you can get as much as possible in return for one of the best defenders in the game? And maybe they could have gotten a nice little pick package in return for Micah that they could have used in the draft this year. Assets that they could have utilized now that would be helping the team before the start of the season. But they didn't do it. They drug their heels. And the problem is, the later you get into the process, when teams know you might be a little bit desperate and they see the relationship starting to come apart at the seams, well, what happens? Well, teams know that you're up against it. And they had a shorter pool to work with because of the extension, and they wound up with 2 first-round picks. Now, I don't think it's ever good business to give up on star talent, because the assumption that you're going to get draft picks in return and those are automatically going to become Micah Parsons types, that's a fallacy. Because Micah Parsons, those type of players don't grow on trees. So you better know what you're doing with those picks, and you better know how to develop your players. Because if you F this up, that's going to be a big-time problem. And that's going to be the pressure on the Cowboys, because right now they're picks, 2 first-round picks, and Jera is very excited about it. And, of course, Jera, anytime he gets picks or makes a trade, you always hear the names of Herschel Walker get brought up. And it was last night at the press conference. Jerry, you could see the twinkle in his eye. Like, he is trying to do whatever he can to recapture the magic from, 89 because he wants another championship before he dies. Now, I love Jerry. I respect him. And I watched that documentary, and I was like, wow. Okay, he cares about his players. He risked everything to be owner to the Cowboys. So, he put everything out there and struck it rich on one well. It's a great story. And I love Jerry, but he is crazy. But it's like, dude, why are you dragging your heels on this? If you knew this was a possibility, then you should have been out in front of this sooner to get more in return because of the asset, like Micah Parsons. But what's going to happen is once they use those picks and once there are actual names, specific players attached to those picks, you better make sure they know what they're doing. And you better make sure they develop, because if not, he's going to get clowned big time. Now, I understand why he made the move to a degree, because the Cowboys aren't going anywhere this year. They were top heavy. CD's making a bunch of Jake. You've got Dak with the biggest contract in the NFL. You're not going anywhere, so why add another luxury item? And one thing that's clear, and this is something I, picked up on last night in discussions, the Cowboys were scarred by the run defense in the postseason of late. Getting carved up, not being able to stop the run, not being able to get their defense off the field, it had an impact on Jera, and he wanted to improve that. So you bring in Kenny Clark. So they're going to be stronger up the middle. I'm okay with that. But this is a tough one. This is why you don't drag your heels in negotiations. Be aggressive, get out in front of it, and get as much in return as you possibly can. And that's my fear here, is that because they weren't on top of it the way they should have been, then they maybe forfeited potential assets they could have gotten in return from Micah instead of 2 firsts and Kenny Clark. It could have been more. Maybe you get a bigger haul. So we shall see. But one thing for certain, the Cowboys weren't going anywhere with Micah. They're not going anywhere without Micah. This team, at least I think Jerry and his son have recognized that, we got to rebuild. This is a process. It's a rebuilding process. All right, I've got more thoughts on that. Big time move. You got to love the NFL and the drama. The big games I like this weekend, give me I like Ohio State to upset Texas. They're -1.5. That's tomorrow morning at 9. I like Bama to roll over Florida State -13.5. Give me Clemson laying the 4.5 against LSU. And I like Miami with Carson Beck and Mario Cristobal to get over on Notre Dame. Those are the 4 big games, but there's a lot of action coming up, and we got a lot of things to get to. I got more on. I watched the entire Cowboys documentary on Netflix. I'll share my thoughts on that. I'll recap my trip to Anaheim. If you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. Football, baby! It's back. Yeah! Let's get this weekend, long week. You got the RipCityDrive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620, Rip City Radio.